right now. As you can see on the screen, if you want a link to the replay for today, just send me an email to paul@ilifecoachtraining.com. I know that I'm going to be talking about 100 miles an hour. The reason why is because we're going to be giving you a lot of content during this particular workshop. And it's about the best way that we can do it. It's just, and what you're going to learn about us, the separation between Life Coach Training Institute and other schools really is this. Not only are we fully online and on demand program, which 98% of our students work full time, so that works for them. Not only that, not only are we affordable, but the real difference maker for us is our Jumpstart program. The fact that our students actually know how to get clients, and so we do everything in Jumpstart. And you saw that little bit of a commercial from it. We really bring you through the A to Z, the business development roadmap of how do you get a practice up and going. And we cover everything from how do you discover your target market, how do you sell, how do you develop your personal brand, how do you attract clients, how do you close clients. If you went into a networking group right now and you had a 60-second pitch that you needed to give, like Laura did in that commercial, would you know what to say? Could you actually sell yourself in 60 seconds or less? And I know I use the word sell, but the problem is that most of us are terrified of it, but we show you how to do these things in really natural ways that engage people in conversation rather than it just being a sales pitch. And so, so if you're interested in that, there's two ways of getting certified with Life Coach Training Institute. One is just taking the Life Coach certification course. It's 10 modules with activities and testing at the end. Some of you are in the free course. You can always add on the exam and just get certified that way. If you want to be a part of Jumpstart, it's $99 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment, and it's everything. It includes certification. And today, for being a part of this, if you're interested in a 35% discount, that means that certification is normally $195. It drops it to $127. And for Jumpstart, it's normally $99 a month, and you can take advantage of getting that for $65 a month. But we're going to show you today really what the difference maker of Life Coach Training Institute is, because we don't do fluffy workshops, and we're not going to sit here selling you the whole time. So with no further delay, let's jump in and let's get started. Again, if you're interested in the replay or the discount, just send me an email to paul@ilifecoachtraining.com, and I'll get that out to you. It won't be on the screen during this presentation, and mostly because those things are going to go out of date probably in the next week. So let's get rolling. One of the things that I always ask my clients when we start is I say, 90 days from now, where do you expect that you will be? And there's a reason why I never ask people where do they dream that they will be, because dream doesn't really have any traction. Dreams are not the same thing as goals. When I say expectation, what I mean is that 90 days ago, you could have predicted this week. 90 days ago, you were making choices that were so powerful that 90 days ago, I could have asked you, what car would you be driving? Who would you be friends with? Where would you be living? What streets would you be driving down? What food would you be eating? And on what days? All kinds of different things. What kind of conversations are you going to have this week? You could have nailed it with about 98, 99% certainty. And it's not just because life is predictable. It's because you're a powerful person who makes choices, and those choices always bear fruit. And so what we have to ask ourselves is, if we don't like what we're living into right now, and what I really believe is that for most coaches, they're getting into coaching out of a defining moment of their life, and they're wanting something to shift. They're wanting something different. Because what happened for most of us is that we didn't do the thing that was actually in our heart to do. Something grabbed us along the way. But this is a defining moment for most people, that this is a transition moment to actually step into what you were made for. And so today, whether it be your relationships or whether it be your career in coaching, and I'm going to mute everybody really quick so that we don't have a lot of background noise coming in. Whether it be your career, whether it be your relationships, any area that you are settling right now for less, what would the boldest version of yourself do with that relationship, with your job, with your career in coaching? What would the boldest version of yourself do with what you're wanting? And if it's different than the choice that you're going to make by midnight tonight, then what is happening is that fear is already reducing you. It's already eliminating your possibilities. And so what I'm calling you out towards today, because this is what we have to do. If we're going to coach people, we have to coach ourselves as well. It's hard to lead people where we're not willing to go ourselves. Coach yourself today. What would the boldest version of yourself do? That is your right decision today. It may just be one, but one decision today makes a huge difference from 90 days from now. That's the difference maker that we want. So I want to hold you to that today. So how do we start? How do we understand this fee kind of thing, setting fees, especially with coaching? Because I have a lot of coaches, and this is kind of the number one question that I get asked outside of how do I get clients, is the how do I set fees and what do I base them on? I had a coach call me yesterday from Florida, and they asked me, what do I do? Do I call other coaches in my area? There's not a whole lot of coaches in my area, but should I call and ask them what they're charging? And I'm like, absolutely not. You don't charge what everybody else is charging in your area. We can't have, because we have personal goals. This is one time in your life when you get to actually determine what your worth is, probably for the first time in your life. You actually get to choose who you work with as opposed to just throwing yourself out there in the market. And these are some important mindset shifts that we're going to have, because today I'm going to show you, we're going to talk about 3 things that are the basis for setting your fees. And it's going to come from mindset shifting. It's going to go from mindset shifting to actually very practical towards the end. And you're going to know what your fee is supposed to be by the end of this workshop. One thing that you need to know on the front end is that it's never about the money. That is not, it's even if somebody tells you it's about the money, it's really never about the money when it comes to working with someone or buying a product or whatever. People choose in their budgets what they want to spend money on every month. And I'm going to show you what it really is about, but it's never about the money. So you never have to be fearful about your fees being too high. You may actually have a bigger concern about your fees being too low, but it's never about the money. Coaching clients do not shop price, and this is the thing that I told that coach yesterday who contacted me. Listen, your clients who are looking for you are not saying, well, you know what, I'm going to go with this guy over here because he's going to give me a better deal than you. No, that's a transaction. That's not relationship. And so that's why people are not shopping price. I don't want price shoppers. I'm not interested in doing, because I bring something to the table for my clients that nobody else can. The same thing for you. There's a different reason why someone would work with you versus working with me. They're not shopping price. They're buying into a person before they ever buy into a service. So let's start to get really practical. Here's the first thing that you're going to need to understand about basing your fees. Your fees are first based on the benefit and the value that the client receives. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let me light this up. And for some of you who are outside the U.S., my apologies, because I know that we always have people who are outside the U.S. Zaman's joining us from Toronto today, and so if these brands do not look like in your area or something like that, my apologies. The numbers that you see on here are in U.S. dollars, but you're still going to be able to get it, I think. In the U.S., we kind of recognize these brands as brands of gas. And Arco's always arguably the cheapest, all the way up to like Shell and Exxon. They're kind of like, we would say, like more higher end or something. But how do people decide if they're going to pay $2.15 a gallon for Arco or $2.50 something for Exxon? What makes people decide? Well, here's what they're going to decide it on. They're going to decide it, first of all, based on the value that they see in the gas themselves. And here's how they're going to reason it. They're going to reason it by, well, some people are going to say, I value my car and I want the best gas for my car. So that's where the value is going to come from. So they're going to pay a higher end price for their gas. When they look at those prices, they're going to buy the best gas if they think that it's worth it for their car. And this is the funniest thing, because your car is usually, in most cases, the second most expensive thing that you'll ever own in your life. But it's amazing how people will look around and they will look for the cheapest gas to put in it. Here's the funny thing. In the United States, I know plenty of people who will pay $3, $4, $5 for a small cup of coffee. And it's mass market. It's probably a chain like Starbucks. They will pay $3, $4 for a small cup of coffee. But they don't want to pay $2, $3 for a huge gallon of gas. Why? Because it's about value. When they look at it, they're like, I don't value this gas, or I don't value this car, but I value this cup of coffee. And even though there was less work involved in me getting this cup of coffee, because we're dealing with refinery, we're dealing with a long-term impact on my car that cost me thousands of dollars, I value this more. People will do the same thing with bottle of water. That's why people will choose something that is balanced out. Logically, we know that the gas is worth more, but we're not going to pay more for it because we don't value it. So the way most people live is that they're going to say all gas is equal. It's not really that different, and I'm only going to pay what I have to, which means that they're going to drive down the street and they're going to look for an Arco, or they're going to go with whatever the cheapest gas is on the corner. And what they'll probably say is, if the best gas is the cheapest gas, then I will buy it. But that's the only reason that I would buy it. They don't really value it for being the best gas. They're just really, at the end of the day, they want to fill up their car as cheaply as they possibly can. And so this is what you have to understand about it. Where there is no value, there is no loyalty. Meaning that they will bounce around from gas station to gas station. It's not because it's not about the gas at all. There's not a relationship. It's just a transaction. This is what I was trying to share with this coach yesterday. Is that a person who's shopping price between coaches, not interested in that person because it's transactional in nature and they are not going to get the change that they need in their life. I need them to believe in who I am as a coach, to believe in themselves, to value themselves, because it's the relationship that is going to allow them to get the transformation that they need. They need to value my voice. They need to value the questions in the fact that I'm a change agent, or they won't see the change. That's why you don't want a cheap price on your coaching, because people need to value what you bring to the table because it's critical to their success. And so coaching's not a transaction, it's a relationship. This is what we have to understand when we're setting our fees. That's why we don't want low fees. And it's also helping you understand why people do business with coaches and why they don't. They don't choose to not do business with a coach because they can't afford it. It's always on this, first of all, on this value side, but it's also something else. It's also about benefits. And in benefits, if let's think about it like this. If I go and I buy an iPhone, if I go down the street and I say I go to Verizon and I buy an iPhone, do you realize that everybody who walks in the door that day to buy an iPhone is they're not going to look at your bank account. They're not going to ask you to fill out a application that says, hey, I'll only make this certain amount. So they're going to do a sliding scale for your phone, to give you a better price. They don't. Everybody who walks in there pays the exact same price. Rich, poor, whatever, everybody's going to pay the same price. Well, I don't know if you've noticed this, but do you realize that rich and poor all have that phone? This is one thing that's fascinating in the United States right now, is that if you walk around, and even gas stations and everything else, but here's one of the things that I learned about in some of these other countries that are more third world. You won't believe some of the technology that people are walking around within their hands. Like, well, is this really what they should be doing? They don't even have shoes, or they're taking public transportation. Shouldn't they get like the cheapest phone and use that in their budget towards something else? But we're not the people to judge that. You know why? Because it's about benefit. I don't know what benefits this phone brings to them. It doesn't mean that they're just sitting around on Facebook the entire time, but they could be. It just depends on what they benefit. Even an individual who is financially challenged will sacrifice for what they value and what they benefit. That's, again, why it's never about the money. It's never about that you cost too much. Because what I will do in my life, I'll give you an example. I use a phone carrier service that is pretty top notch, very well known, and in some months I'm like, I'm paying way too much for cell service, and I would go and I would at least evaluate some of the other competition out there. But and I could save money if I switched to a different carrier. I could probably save 20, 30, maybe $50 a month. But one of the things that I would be sacrificing is when I save money over here, I'm going to sacrifice something else, right? What am I going to be sacrificing? I'm going to be sacrificing the service that I get from that other provider, which is still top notch and nobody can compare to it. And for me, it's worth the sacrifice. I don't like paying this extra amount because I see other people using other plans and they're not paying as much as I am. But I know that my phone's going to work when no one else's works. I know that I'm going to get great customer service. If I call, I'm going to get a person. I know they are a growing company that are even getting better service and everything as they go along. This is how we make our decisions. And I want you to understand this. When you work with a client, they need to have skin in the game. This is why free coaching and cut rate coaching and cheap coaching does not work for people. You need to understand this, because I had a conversation even yesterday with another coach who was saying, well, there's a certain clientele that I'm thinking about, and I'm thinking about sliding scale. And I'm like, well, why are you thinking about that? Because the reality is that you're probably cheating someone out of their transformation. I don't know how this spiritual principle works. I just know it's a spiritual principle. That change, we all know, happens in the heart. It's on the deepest part of you. But for some reason, your heart is connected to money. It's connected to your wallet. It's whatever we value, we will pay for. And there's some trust issues, and there's some other deeper issues that are always connected to finances. So when things get tight, people boil down their life to some things that they can't live without. So everybody has this value system in them. And there's some things that end up being a little bit negotiable in those. But don't cheat anyone out of their transformation by giving them a pass on having skin in the game. If I haven't invested in something, I don't value it. If I invest very little, I don't value or see the real benefits in it. If it's something that I would cut off really quickly, I don't see the benefit and value of it in my everyday. And if you go with a cheap fee and somebody is working with you, you know what's going to happen is they're going to no show for appointments. They're going to keep putting off some of the change in their life. I set a really high fee for the people that I work with, and when they show up to work with me on our appointment and our set appointment times, they're always on time. They've always got their stuff going together, and they're always highly motivated. They don't slack off for a week or two. It's impossible for them to, because they are engaged, because their heart is engaged and they have skin in the game. So when we have a fee, it should be a little bit challenging for someone to pay, because they need to value it. So here's the third thing. We talked about value and benefits. And so what I want you to understand is that your goal as a coach is right now. We talk a lot in Jumpstart, and we do another workshop that talks about building your own network with people and these kinds of things. Because here's one of the things is that because we're in a relational business, we work in a network with people, and it's through those relationships that we're working with other people in business and everything that are helping us get. You ever heard somebody say, if you want to go a short distance, go by yourself, but if you want to go really far, you run with other people? And they act like it's going to be faster if you do it by yourself. And actually, in coaching, it's not. You build a network, you do this with people, and they will actually help you get there faster. But you need to have the right people. You need to have the right kind of connections. And so inside of that network, and when I say network, we're talking about relationships that we have that they may or may not be potential clients. And say in most cases, they're not. They're just people who want to help us, and we want to help them. So our goal is, whether this person is going to be a client or not, is to add value to people and to show how what we have benefits them. And we do this long before they ever become clients, and we do it for people who don't become clients, because what those people will do is they will cheer for us, they will celebrate us, and more importantly, they will open the door for us to other people. So know that we can add value and we can bring benefits to people long before anybody ever becomes our client. This is not something that you have to really wait on. Now, here's the next thing about fees. Your fee communicates a perceived value. What I said a while ago is that you're actually in a position right now to tell people what you are worth. And this is a hard thing for many coaches because most of us have been in a helping mode. We have a lot of people who come into Life Coach Training Institute and their background is in social work, counseling, and they're highly degreed. They are highly educated people, and but they've also been through the ringer. They've been through the ringer with not getting paid what they were worth because of insurance battles and red tape with the government and all kinds of stuff like that. And now they're breaking into coaching. And for a lot of people who have work jobs, and HR has determined what your worth is because they told you what your salary was and those kinds of things. This is a hard thing for people because they don't know what they are worth. And a lot of times coaches will come to me and say, well, I feel uncomfortable about my fee, or I feel uncomfortable since I'm just starting charging this exorbitant amount. But this is the important thing for you to get is your fee communicates a perceived value. This is the first time in your life that you may be able to tell everybody what you're worth and what they're going to pay for it. And you need to be really bold in it, even if you don't feel bold on the inside yet. Here's what I'll say is that if you can set a high fee, and I tell our coaches in Jumpstart, just practice it. Because what will happen is that your body will shut down when you'll try to say it. You need to actually look in the mirror, say that fee to yourself in the mirror, see yourself saying it, get some muscle memory of saying what your fees are and being really, really bold about it. Because this is the thing is that your heart will catch up, your emotions and everything, because all of us know that we bring more to the table than any job is paying us right now. We know that we bring a lot more, and we've done a lot more for other companies and people than they've probably done for us. That's why we're in this transition period. But this is a time right now for you to not only begin to inform yourself, to start celebrating yourself, to start treating yourself like you are a valuable individual, but it's to communicate to the world, here's what my value is. And here's an example of what I mean by that. If I have two tennis shoes, and if you looked at the screen, you're probably going to immediately make a judgment call about these. Which one is more valuable than the other? And most of you are going to say the Nikes are more valuable than the Champion shoes. Well, where are you getting that from? Are you talking about workmanship, expertise? Because, see, I have a lot of coaches that come to me and they're like, Paul, I just got started. So what does a first-year coach start with? And I think that that's the wrong place to start thinking. This is not about expertise of why people work with us. They work with us because of trust. They work with us because of likability, and they believe that we care about them and we can help them solve their problems. Expertise is like the least part of it. It's the way that business is always done, by trust and likability and how people see the value and benefit of something. And so, and how can I prove that? I can prove that because Nikes and Champions are both made by people who make pennies on the dollar. They might make 25, 50 cents an hour making these shoes that you're paying hundreds of dollars for. And I'm not trying to make a social justice issue out of this. What I'm saying is that you're not buying Nikes at that price because of expertise, because of the professional who made them for you. You're buying them at that rate because Nike told you what they were worth, and you believed them. And when I was growing up, I remember I lived in a little town when I was a child that was in Missouri. My family moved around a little bit in the South. We lived in Tennessee, Missouri, and Louisiana. When we were living in Missouri, we were in the recession. It's the 80s. I'm almost 43 years old right now. So we're in the recession. My dad made about $190 a week. And I remember when Air Jordans came out and they were saying, we're pricing these at $100. And people were like, it's the 80s. No one's going, and $100 is a lot more in the 80s, right? Nobody's going to pay $100 for a pair of tennis shoes. That's ridiculous. And everybody's kind of, well, lo and behold, when basketball season rolled around in my city, or I should say my town, it's 6,000 people in Missouri. 30% of those people, my family included, were below the poverty line, and everybody had Air Jordans for school starting back. Why? They sacrificed for what they valued, and they saw the benefits in them, even though they weren't really explained. But Nike communicated what their value was, and everybody believed it. If they wanted those shoes, they're going to pay that price. But if you don't see the value and benefit in them, you don't believe what Nike is telling you, then you go and get Champions. But you will never see Nikes at Payless Shoe Source. They've already determined what their value is, and they're not trying to get champions customers. And the people who are Nike customers are always loyal. They buy new shoes every year or every 2 years. They buy Nike products. They're really, really bought in. They're developing a brand loyalty. They're developing relationships with their customers based on a product. Now, this is what we have to understand. You need to determine that value because you will attract people to whatever price you do. Whether it's $25 an hour, $75 an hour, $100 an hour, you're going to attract a clientele to that. And who you attract, you may or may not want to work with them, particularly if your fee is low. Now, let me give you another example so that you can understand this. In your city right now, because some people are like, Paul, you don't understand. You live in San Diego and there's millions of people there and people know more about coaching, but I live in a small town or a small region and there's only 25,000 people here or something like that. I don't want to hear that because mostly I know a lot of professions, whether it's real estate, that is a oversaturated market and there's always new agents who are starting. So you have an incredible opportunity if you're brand new in your city doing this. And I also know that regardless of where you live, that right now there are people who are attorneys that are making $1,000 an hour for what they do, and it's in small towns, it's in small cities, and it's in small regions. And here's what you can, if I compared attorney number 2, who makes $1,000 an hour versus attorney 1 who makes $75 an hour, there's some things that I can tell you are very different about them, their thought process, and also about their clients. Attorney number 1 checks all their own email and they return all their calls. And there's a lot of people who want to hire attorneys that are like, I like my attorney because I give them a call and they answer the phone when I call, or I text them and they get right back to me in 15 minutes. Well, here's what I would suggest that is. That is a poverty mindset. Because I'm not interested in talking to the man all the time. That's when everything's falling apart. I need to talk to the woman who is in charge of everything or whatever. What we have to understand is that if they are returning all of your calls, they're returning all of the calls of any squeaky wheel, any kind of pain in the neck kind of client that they have. And what that means is that your case is not actually getting very much attention. Even if they are very skilled, because most people would probably assume that the $1,000 an hour attorney is very skilled. That's not really true. We don't know where they went to school or if they win cases or not. They just told you what they were worth. Attorney number 1 may be more skilled. They may be more highly trained. They may be more educated, but they don't value themselves enough to get their fees up. And so what this means is that they are overloaded with work. They do not have more clients. So if your fees are lower, you will not have more clients. Guaranteed. It's just a scientific fact. We've established that in business. People with lower fees do not have more clients than people with higher fees. You will not have more clients. And attorney number 1 likely has clients that don't value them and don't pay. Meaning that they're probably getting people who are saying, oh, I feel like this attorney's ripping me off and they're not working hard enough on my stuff and everything else. This is what happens. And because I know attorneys like attorney number 1, and they don't have a value for themselves, and and there's a lot of different things that are going on, and they're doing the best that they can, but they simply don't have the resources to help their clients more than what they're doing. And it's their own fault because they don't value themselves. They attract people who don't value them. Attorney number 2, though, has a support staff. They're probably able to hire some of the upcoming best and brightest attorneys to work for them and do some of the other work, pulling files and those kinds of things. They have as many clients as they need because attorney number 1 needs to work about 12 hours for to match up to attorney number 2. Attorney number 2 works a fraction of the time of attorney number 1, and they get to choose who they work with. So it's kind of like Nike. If they say, hey, here's what I'm worth, then they are going to separate, and they're actually going to keep away the people who aren't going to value them. They will create a natural separation there. So this is the other part of it. Your fees are going to come from value and benefits. that the client receives, but it's also going to come out of how you create a perceived value. It's going to come from you valuing yourself. And here's the thing, again, your entire life you have had an HR department that has never, your job description did not have your personality in mind. It did not have your skill set really in mind. It didn't have you in mind of how good of a listener that you are, the fact that you're responsible and you care about the organization. It didn't say any of those things in job description. Matter of fact, the way that HR was concerned is that there's probably 50 people who could do this job, and you got picked, but you're not getting raises or getting paid for who you are. You're getting paid by the position. And now, for the first time in your life, you get to be paid for who you are. And you've got to inform yourself, and you've got to inform the world of who that is. Now, here's the last part, and this is where it gets really practical. Your fees have to be based on your personal goals. So when coaches start up and they say, I charge $75 an hour because I'm a new coach, I charge $50 an hour, I charge $100 an hour, my question is this getting you to where you want to go? Is that number translate into what you need for your life and get you to your personal goals? And when I say personal goals, I'm saying things like this. Well, is your goal to eventually go full-time, or is it to simply do this part-time? I'm not saying that you're wrong for wanting to do this part-time or full-time. That it's what do you want? What have you decided for your life? For me, I never thought that I could go full-time as a coach. I was like, when I started, I had so many disqualifiers, and I'd never made this kind of money before in my life. And when I started, I was like, well, maybe I can get a client or somebody stupid enough to pay this to work with me or something. I don't know. I didn't have a whole lot of value for myself at the time. And then when stuff started happening, it was like, wow, I really could do this full time. I saw a bigger end game. So maybe you're just trying to create margin in your life, and you want to work full time in the job that you enjoy, or that things are really good over there. It's not a bad place, but you want to create margins. Let's just at least know what your end game is. What is your personal goal? Is your goal to get margin in your life? Is your goal to go full time in the next year, 2 years? We need some kind of end game, at least for the first year. We don't need one for 5 years necessarily, but you do need to know from September of 2017 to September 2018, where would you like to be? If you could pinpoint it. Most people don't set goals, but this is what you need to have, is an end game in mind when you're setting your fees. And how much do you need to make? How much do you want to make on top of what you're already making, maybe in your full-time job or whatever? We need to know what that number is. Now, once you have that number, let's say that the sample goes 20,000 for the first year. You have to ask some questions. What are your overhead expenses? And I'm really big, we show our coaches in Jumpstart all the time that you should not have a lot of overhead expenses. There's no reason why you can't bring home 90, 95, 98% of what you make, because there's not a lot of overhead. You don't need an office. You don't need to pay for a bunch of money for flyers and all of this other stuff. It's not the same as a brick and mortar business. And so you really shouldn't have a lot of overhead expenses, but you might have some. You buy coffee when you're meeting with clients, or you buy coffee for them or something like that. I got a business membership at this club because it allowed me to have amazing views of the city, and I would entertain my clients there, and I would buy them coffee or maybe breakfast or something like that. Know what your overhead expenses are, but don't create overhead expenses that are unneeded. How many hours do you want to work a month? No one ever asked me this my entire life. I would guess that most people have never asked you that right now. They never told you that you actually have an opportunity to decide how much that you work. And some of us old school people, I grew up, my parents are in their 70s now, and I'm almost 43. And what the norm was is that everybody works 40 hours a week. Isn't that what you're supposed to do in society? At least 40 hours. That's a full-time job and those kinds of things. Well, some years ago, I went to this networking group, and I remember it was the beginning of the year, and they actually had a coach come in and do a little, she was part of the group, and she did this little thing of, what do you want for this year? And she asked some questions, and people were saying what they wanted, which for most of them was more financial success. But what it meant for all of everything that they wanted to do was working harder. And I wasn't interested in working harder because I'd worked hard my whole life. I was interested in working smarter. And when I was sitting there, we got to the end and people were saying, well, I need to do this. I need to take this step. It got to me. And I said, you know what? Right now I work 40 hours a week. I'd like to work only 40 hours a month. And everybody looked at me like I was lazy or that was crazy or whatever. But what I understood is that my choices matter. I can actually decide this because this is going to be my own business. And if I want to get there, it means that I need to work with the right clients and I need to have the right game plan. This is something for you to think about right now. Don't think about this as having to be a 40-hour a week gig. It doesn't have to be. This day in this time of my life, I only work about 20 hours a month. That's all I need to be able to accomplish my goals, to help a ton of people. And I have hundreds of people that I work with every year. But that's all I need to do. I set that goal in mind, and I've eclipsed it and even more, so that now I get to give my life away because it's not about money to me. This weekend, I visited a house that just got launched. We had some people in our area that a year ago they had a dream about opening a house for kids who were rescued out of sex trafficking. And I've got a lot of friends who are into the raising awareness end of things and stuff. But what do you do when you get people out? What's going to happen? And these people have huge value on these girls aged 12 to 17 who have been devastated. They can't just go back into normal society. They need some inner work done, and we value those people. So when they came up with this idea, it only took them 1 year that you wouldn't believe all of the hard stuff but miraculous stuff that happened for them to open up this house last Saturday. And being able to hand them a check, not just walk around and say, this is a great idea. I brought my daughters around that house and I said, listen, we talk about this stuff. What I want you to understand, even for my 13-year-old, you need to want something for your life. I'll say this to you guys. Your story as a coach needs to resolve. It's not just about you making money. It's about the fact that there are people who have barriers in their life that need people to help them confront them, because the whole world, there are some very powerless people who are waiting on our stories to resolve. You need to make more money. You need to be great. You need to want to have more influence in people's life and in your city than you have right now, because there are lives out there that are waiting on you to show up and be your best self, to be your boldest self. And that's what's the reality for these young girls who are moving in this house, is that I needed to be, some of the decisions that I was making a handful of years ago is making a direct impact in their life right now, because I was choosing boldness and I was choosing to value myself. I can't tell other people to value themselves if I don't value myself first. This is where these things come out of. I know you need to hear this because the end game is much bigger than just our income. And I know who you people are, is that you've brought this to the table for a bigger reason than what you're probably thinking about or talking about right now. So we need to know how many hours we want to work a month. Let's get back to it. $20,000. Let's say that's our first year goal. Well, let's say that I only want to work to get to 20,000. Let's say that I have a choice right now to only work 10 hours a month, which means that 10 hours a month times 12 months is 120 hours out of an entire year that I will spend doing part-time coaching. And here's the simple math on that. Want it practical? $166 an hour. Now, I am not getting this fee based on what other US coaches make, any other coach in my town makes, any other coach that I know makes. This is out of, I have went through this process of deciding what are value and benefits, and I am giving a perceived value to the world. And now I'm also talking about what goals do I have. And I need to achieve this goal, I need to at least be charging $166 a session when I work. And what that boils down to is 3 clients. That's why if you're in a city of 6,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, you can find 3 people to work with you simultaneously. This is not some, can I find, there's not a lot of people interested in paying this amount of money to work with me. Can you find 3 people in the world? You can find 3 people in the world. You can find 3 people in your city to simultaneously work with you to achieve this goal. This is how reasonable it really gets. But this is the process that we get to come up with this number. But let me show you some comparisons, and I'm going to show you what happens to the coach who has an arbitrary number, who has sliding scaling fees, who doesn't believe in themselves, who feels like I'm a first year coach who's never had experience and all of this other stuff that doesn't take anything into account. To get to 20,000 as a part-time coach, a $75 an hour session coach needs to work 22 hours a month on top of their full-time job, and they need to maintain 6 clients. That's a lot of work, and that doesn't get you to your goal. It doesn't get you financially free, because everybody knows that probably that $20,000 may or may not get you financially free. It's not going to get you towards being full-time. That's why if I'm working 22 hours a month, I need to be doing a lot better than $75 a session, and I need to be making a lot more money than $20,000 a year. I'm not really motivated by that. And I'm not interested probably in working with these kinds of clients because it's going to be like a revolving door. With $166 a session, I have chosen what I am going to do, and I've chosen who I'm going to work with, and I only need 3 people to agree with it at any one time. But let's think about things. It's like, what's stopping you from $225 a session? That's 7.4 hours a month. That's only 2 clients. Can you get 2 clients? You don't need to be a salesperson. You don't need to have the best website in the world or snazzy graphics or anything else. You can find 2 people who will work with you at this rate. This is not hard in the sense of, here's what I'd say. I don't think this is any harder than the sacrifice you guys are making, staying, doing something that you hate, stuff that is not even dealing with the margins, is not even paying your bills right now, and working with people who may or may not value. That is a greater sacrifice to me than figuring out how can I find 2 to 3 clients to work with me simultaneously. That is cake compared to that. Doesn't mean that there won't be work, because there is. We have a Jumpstart program. We show our students every step along the way that they really need to make. It's an A to Z roadmap on everything you need to know to target a market. How do you attract clients? How do you put yourself in a position to do all these things? We have that covered. If you don't know what your next step is, we can help you discover your next step so that you can be not only a proficient coach, but you can have a thriving practice. We're not interested in just coaches getting certified. We want you to thrive, and thriving starts in prosperity of soul before it comes out. And when it comes out, not only will you have all of your needs met, but you'll start meeting the needs of the world. This is why we do what we do. When I sat there on Saturday and not only walked my daughters around and said, listen, you need to see this, because you don't wake up every morning wondering about your safety. You wake up and you sleep late, and you know that you're fine, and you know that you'll go on your computer and you'll do your school online, and you'll do these kinds of things, stuff that you're never going to have to think about. These people are incapable, but they're just as valuable and they're just as precious. I want you to get outside of yourself and see this. And I say to my daughter, because Jaden, you need to want something. Your story needs to resolve for their sake. You need to steward what you have. If you've got a brilliant mind and access to a computer right now, I'm trying to figure out what other kinds of things, barriers are stopping our coaches or people from taking the next step in their life. And so on Saturday, not only do I get to celebrate with people and encourage them and be in somewhat of an advising role, as they move forward, but to be able to hand a check over to them that they could not get themselves, not because they asked for money and they don't beg for money or anything else. They've actually went out on the limb and sacrificed to live into their story. Being able to hand that over to them is one of the most satisfying things in the world, because I know it's going to have direct impact. And that's what I think about in my life every day, is legacy. The end game is not just what I make at the end of this year, but it's my kids, but it's also this world is going to be a different place. There will be safer neighborhoods. There will be safer homes. There will be people who are going to break generational poverty out of the life story that I'm going to live. What story are you living into? I'm in my 40s. I'm already thinking about legacy, and I think that I'm behind my time. If you're behind the time, you can make a bold decision to make a different step. It may be just getting certified. If you want to get certified with us, you can take advantage of the 35% discount. It's only $127. It's not going to put you out. If you want us to walk with you, these are the kinds of things that I do with our coaches all the time. If it's inspiring for you, this is the life that I live. and it is a compelling life that I know that other people want. But for some reason, they've been unable to give themselves permission to say yes to it. That's what we do as coaches. This is how I live my life. And I expect that our coaches do the exact same thing. If you want that, Jumpstart gives you a ton of support. It's a 3-month minimum commitment. You get certified. You get all the business development. I do a group coaching call with those students every Wednesday that's live. We record those calls. We have an online community where students are role playing with one another. They support one another. They share resources. So there's all of this that can walk alongside you to help you get to where you want to go. That's not the only thing that we have as well. You also get a free listing on lifecoachmatch.com. You can search by country, state, city, fees, gender, all of that stuff. When you get in, you can see that you have 2 profile pictures. There's information to put your website, Facebook, about your fee information, credentials. There's actually a lot of places, if you've got social media, embed a video on your profile on here. This is something that's normally $75 an hour that we give you for free. Here's Tara, one of our coaches that's in Minneapolis. She's doing crazy stuff. She's all the time writing, doing a lot of amazing stuff on here. She's got a t-shirt line of things, but she also has been in a lot of places. You can see that Wall Street Journal, Huffington Post, there's a lot of places that she's finding herself in. I want to celebrate the success of our coaches. That gives me juice more than anything. Here's Kirsten Frosch. She has combined coaching and consulting in the sense that she works as an academic life coach, but she also does consulting as well. You can see that she's kind of featured us down here on her own page. But this is what we live for, is that I know these stories are helping other people's stories resolve. That's I had a coach from our program just yesterday contact me, and they were talking about how our conversation we had last week ended up morphing over the next 3 days to her challenging and helping other people in their business become more successful. She's like, it's amazing how that conversation all of a sudden translated over here. And I was like, yes, because if we are our boldest self and doing these things, that's the kind of change that happens for the rest of the world. And it's what we're made to do. And so if you are interested in that at all, and just as a reminder, if you want a link to the replay from today, we'll have it up within the next few hours. It's Paul at ilifecoachtraining.com. If you want a link to a 35% discount, basically what I'll send you is a discount code. It's only going to be good for about a week. And then it's going to expire. That's why I don't put it on the screen, because some people watch the replay and it's a week after this event or whatever. But if you're interested in either, Paul at ilifecoachtraining.com. I'd love to share that with you and be able to help you take steps along the way. Last thing I'll say, is the boldest version of yourself? What steps do you need to make? May not even be coaching at all. It may be going back to school. It may be quitting school. It may be going and not settling for lack of intimacy and relationship with your spouse and going back and doing and cultivating that. It may be some other kinds of things. What will the boldest version of yourself do today? You already know what you need to do. Now go and do that.